Hey, so, over the course of COVID, I have made a lot of these, whatever they are, sort of messages for various people in my community, far and wide, near and short. And so this one is very specific, and I really want to send it to all my friends and just say to them, hey, I love you. And I have had some clarity over the last bunch of years, but more specifically, during COVID, it's hit me to do all kinds of neighborhood-based things. And I really want to do those, and those are at nextsteptogether.net. But here's what I want to hit you guys up with. And I think this is maybe the next step together, right? It's all about next step together. So I think the next step together, or one of the next steps together that we should take, is calling in our spokespeople at the very highest levels, right? First, kind of like the way maybe a brain wakes up from some kinds of sleep or whatever. We have been unconscious, right? We have been scared, whatever. It's not something that we need to be thinking about blame around, because it's as if we were a river boat, and we've heard that there's a big waterfall coming up, right? And what are we going to do? Right? Big waterfall coming. We can do nothing, and we can put our heads in the poker game, or go to sleep, or get drunk, or whatever you can do on a riverboat. But one thing you do if a waterfall is coming, if that's what the word is, one thing you do is stop. Right? So, but we don't know how to stop because we have no power. We of the left can't have power because we can't manage to work together. So how do we work together? Well, I think you pick a small enough chunk of us to organize, a chunk that's really in a lot of consent with itself. So I call that the loving left. The people of the left who would want to use love as their tool for revolutionary change, right? The love-evolution. We want to levolt. Okay, so how do we do that? We use, simple consent processes, and those have been laid out through the ages by Quakers, long before that, by indigenous people all over the world. Why? Because they're primarily hunter-gatherers. They aren't living in large groups as enabled by agriculture. This is broad sweeps, but it's basically fact. And so we need to find ways to do what this tree wants, or is built in the shape of a network, right? With stems and branches and branching mechanisms. So we can come into consent around going somewhere together, where into the future, how, with, in consent and with fun and safety and longevity and equality. We want to maximize all the best things in life and get even better at being corporate, being communal, being a family of humanity that, guarantees that the future trillions and trillions and infinite numbers of generations probably can come and live both around this star and all the stars to come. So sorry that's a little heady for you maybe, but I live in the world of, visionary science fiction. And so I'm asking all of you to say, look, we demand our chosen spokespeople to get together sociocratically, in groups of 8 or fewer, and send at least 2 people to represent in groups of 8 or fewer, over and over and over, right? Starting everywhere and connecting everywhere, but doing it geographically wide, just so it's easy and simple and really, we can get to know each other in person. And then also, and that's geographical, but also let's do it in terms of work groups, right? Let's do it in terms of what we work together. So that's non-geographical. So we get into spokes councils, and the work groups can be more informal, as long as the main spokes council group, the ones that our job is to do policy and consent, as long as they're really solid, everybody else can just send in ideas because they're all represented where they are geographically. So We're committed to power equivalence. So we say, look, you people, Charles Eisenstein, right? Daniel Kinsey, Bernie Sanders, Vandana Shiva, Starhawk. We want all of you people to get into groups with people who are also spokes in groups of 8, and represent the consensus of where we want to go. So, and don't represent your own quirky ideas, represent ideas that a critical mass of people can get behind, or you think that they can. Basically, they've said to you in various ways. So some of you are just local people who know people personally. Some of you are famous people who know a lot of people personally, like their work, and approve of a lot of the main points of it. So that's what you do. We get into those groups, and we don't get out of those groups basically forever. And the goal is for the loving left to help the whole left, right, get on the same page forever and work together with critical mass. That's the goal. That's the only goal. That's all we talk about. We don't talk about anything that we can't probably all get to critical mass on, and we divide for projects whenever we need to, right? Whenever we need to. And all of the time, we divide as we need to, like a stream divides around a rock that's an impediment. But it comes right back together and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We don't let a division in what we want to do, as long as we both agree on mission, right, divide us permanently. Okay? We continue to grow like a river grows, like a branching mechanism grows, right? And then branches out and grows again, like the branches to the trunk, to the roots, and back, right? So we can be that way. We need to be that way, getting into working groups, right, and spokes councils. And I think that the next step for you, all my friends, is to organize this locally. And you could say, oh, this is what I was thinking about, should we have this be the Seattle group? And if Charles Eisenstein is in town, we shouldn't invite him because he doesn't represent Seattle people? Well, not necessarily. Do that if you want to. But you could also have a group that's like mixed spokes, right? You could have some people who only represent maybe a few dozen people. And then some people like, say, an Eisenstein, who represents possibly millions, hundreds of millions of people with some credibility, right? Because we know those people are basically into what he's into. And if he says, look, okay, I'll play the game, right? I'll get in support. I'll support and help us get active about all the things that we can easily get in support and get active about. I can live with that. That works for me. And I think that works for my people, and I'll put it out to them. And every person who has an audience, who has a followership, who has perhaps they're formally elected for whatever reason, like a Bernie or a union leader, they all do the same thing. They all start speaking as well as they can for their peeps. Gotta get out of the wind. So, and their only goal is to say, what are we gonna do next with a critical mass of people? And obviously, that critical mass of people, critical means big enough, right? So it's gotta be big. We want basically a quorum of the whole loving left, or the whole left, to be constantly represented. Goodness gracious, I'm in Forest Service land. I just saw something kind of amazing. I think this is relatively unused forest land. Kind of isolated above Leavenworth. So what we do is up to the whole of us, right? So the whole thing about this spokes council thing is the people that we're talking about are spokes in the sense that they speak for us, but also in the sense that they're like a spoke in a wheel. And their goal is to keep the wheel rolling. They're in the wheel too, right? There's a place where basically what we're doing is taking pieces of the rim and making a spoke out of it temporarily in order to create consent and representation. So no one's speaking for just themselves. They're speaking for the group that sent them. And we're not going to spend any time at all, right, on divisive issues. We're going to skirt right around those. And we're not going to send anybody in that we're not sure we can trust. We're going to be very, very careful about that because we're going to be infiltrated. If we're at all successful, right, we're going to be infiltrated as soon as we're successful, essentially. Because success for us is like we're on the road to building a mass movement that will totally change the course of civilization. Get this riverboat, right, off of the course for the waterfall. Deer poop. Deer poop. Get this riverboat off the course of destruction for civilization because there's an infinite number of generations at stake and we don't want them to die and we want to live together. So here's the simple kind of proposition that goes with this. I mean, most people know. I mean, here's the kind of stuff that we agree to. Question. Would you prefer to live in a world of simplicity but longevity, using technology, but not using it for destruction, using it only for survival of everybody in equality, okay? Or would you rather have this kind of a world where it's kind of dog eat dog and some people are hyper rich and some people die of poverty, right? So those are two choices, and that's really just a question. And you can not choose or whatever, pretend like you don't understand or argue, but those are answers. But we only want the people who are saying, yeah, I want to go for that world, right? Living simply so everybody can simply live, right? But living also, not just simply live, but live sharing equally so there's enough for everybody, but not doing it in a violent way like, oh, I got to guillotine those rich people. Do it in a loving way so they're just like, oh, I want to be with those cool people who believe in love, right? Those creative, beautiful, kind people. So that's the kind of thing that we're basically in consent about. Most people in the loving left like that vision, right? We don't know if we're going to get there, but if we could be Denmark tomorrow by snapping our fingers, we'd say, yeah, right? So if you would like us to kind of run ourselves like Norway or Denmark tomorrow, then you're a member of the loving and you'd like to do it with nonviolent means, and you think that love is a really juicy way to do it, then you're welcome into the implementation circles that I am calling forth now with these words. We want you all to come. Get into circles of 8. Send 2 reps immediately. The very first thing you do is send 2 reps in. It's not up and down, it's bad visualization. It's in and out, right? Like a brain, it's networked, right? It's like a tree, it's branching. It's sending impulses, sending needs, and the tree is sending out. Oh, it's also sending in. It's sending out from the leaves, right? Sending out oxygen. So there's this whole exchange network of cycles, but it's mended together in this 1-4-2-8 structure, right? Of branching network where messages and nutrients and waste products and good products can be sent out and received and communicated with, and also through the forest floor using other species. So what I'm saying is, let's do that. Let's create an 8-2 branching mechanism for consent and work that is super solid, but it's nonviolent, and beyond that, it's the loving people are the ones who organize it. So it's going to be really fun to organize. It doesn't mean you have to only believe in love as a method, but what I'm saying is what you need to do to be part of this idea is to think, okay, love is a good idea. Let's try it using love, right? There may be other things we can try, may have to try, but let's also try it with using love as our main mechanism. Why not? Right? I'm willing to give that a shot. That's what this is about. It's not about anything really beyond that. Sorry, I was looking over the edge and not letting you look. Staying in this gorgeous little tiny off-grid structure, which you can't quite really see. It's kind of a metal tent, but pretty nice, pretty big. Anyway, so if you are one of these people that I would call a spokesperson or maybe even a leader of the loving left, and I name some of them. The kind of people are Cornel West, right? People like Martin Luther King Jr., people like Gandhi, right? People like, I said Vandana Shiva, you know, and equal numbers of women and men. It's not important that every representation be exact, but you want to lean towards getting the people who are less represented more represented, right? Because it's harder for them to have their voices heard. So it's all common sense, like, well, it's privilege, that's unequal, it's racism. That's not the important thing that we do, right? What we do is like a family. The person in the most need, whose voice is the most silenced or the least heard, that's the person that we're going to pay attention to because we love everybody, right? And the person in the most need is the person we're going to pay attention to. Oh my God, what is this? Like a chicken. There's like a wild chicken in here. Maybe it got away. I don't know. Doesn't look like anything but a chicken. Maybe it's a partridge. I don't know, but it's walking beside us. Oh my God, I hope it's not like, fuck, take me home. I was seeing this book, The Feral Female. This idea is going viral. Very nice idea. Okay, so that's it. I just wanted to say that while I'm out walking here above Leavenworth and say I think that I'm going to do the whole Next Step Together thing with all of the things from, you know, feeding people in every neighborhood, right? To basically having a dance camp in every neighborhood that's not only about dance, but it's about, you know, renewal and joy. Happiness. I'm still going to do that. That's locally and try to take it around the country. But I'd really rather we all did it in our own space, right? I want to do it in mine. It'd be great if you did it in yours. Get the people who own the space to help a lot, right? Because they own the space. If you can own the space and follow the basic principles, Next Step Together, fantastic. That's probably an easy way to do it. Like Dance New England, for instance, owns all this space. We should have this thing going there all the time. Whenever it's not rented for something that you need the money for. Right? Simple economics is fine. Be practical. Don't worry about purity. Worry about filling all the gaps with love. Worry about filling all the gaps. All the spaces where things are pivoting. All the spaces where there's room, right, for justice and love. Fill those with justice and love. That's the Next Step Together idea, right? Just like you do the way we used to do forever, right? In small family groups, small groups of clans of hunter-gatherers, of probably around, 32. We just made our decisions together all the time because everybody knew everybody. We all knew what everybody was thinking. If we weren't sure, we'd find out. If we had a disagreement, we'd talk until we basically agreed, right? If you had to go with the majority, maybe you did that, maybe you didn't. If it didn't seem like that was going to work too well. Ridge. Ooh. Mountains with snow. Let's see those. Yeah, baby. So we can't really expect, the Democratic Party to do it or the United States government to do it if we can't do it. If we can't create a consent decision-making process and stick to it, how the hell do we get off expecting that the world can do it? Right? So we have to give them an example that's just basically too juicy to ignore, to refuse, too sweet and wonderful to just poo-pah or poo-poo. Poo-pah, what is that? Gray poo-pah. Right, we're not going to go the route of sort of forcing people. We're going to go the route of inviting them to dinner, right? And just being so sweet and warm and loving and kind, right, that they just can't resist us. Kafka said they'll just fall and roll in ecstasy at our feet. Why? Because we're going to offer them ecstasy, right? We're going to offer them a road, right, down a river that doesn't go off a waterfall, that's safe and that's beautiful, and for them and for everybody. And I don't care how much richness or money. The offer we're going to make them is like, we're not going to take your shit away without your consent, except unequal power, which you don't deserve and never should have and isn't helping you, because decisions for the whole world that's in one system need to be made together for everybody's best interest in the system. It's just basic common sense, right? We're all in this together. We're all in like a raft, right, on the sea, and we're trying to get to safety or survive for eternity. And there's only, say there's 8 of us. We have to work together to survive. Especially if we have oars and we're trying to get somewhere, right? And that's a good way to visualize it. Mountains. So I strongly advise you to join us, right? And the way I'm suggesting that we do it is we ask the people who represent us to speak for us, and we create spaces for them to speak for us. Like, I'm calling a Seattle global, but anybody can come. We'll get the most representative people we can. Spokes Council process, right? In real life, right? And also broadcast online. I think I'm just going to say, we're not going to have you, the leaders, the speakers, come in, right, on Zoom necessarily at first. That's not what I want. I don't want to start that way. It feels like it doesn't have any juice. Like, ugh. Everyone's freaked out by that, Zoom thing. It doesn't have the power. It just doesn't. So we get everyone together in person that can represent the whole global loving left. And we create an implementation circle. And that implementation circle's job is to do what I just described. And so that's what I'm saying right now. That's what I want to have. And I want to have it as soon as possible every Thursday night in Seattle. And I'd like you to have it within a walking distance of your house too. Possibly better on a different time. So we could send spokes to each other's circles, right? So this is how we create an ongoing consent matrix, right? That maximizes consent. And people are like, well, what about this versus that? The answer is always maximize consent. But not only consent, but consent within a mission. And the mission is to move forward, to constantly keep going towards justice for everybody, power equivalence, right? Efficiency, fun, eternity, not eternity, but basically eternal continuation of an ongoing, beautiful human and post-human experiment in love and justice, continuity, right? Those basic, really simple ideas. You want to get to maximum consent with critical mass, not maximum mass, but maybe in a way maximum mass too, because that is the more. If we're maximized out with mass, everything we do is going to be most efficient. So there's an argument for that, but that's to hash out, right? These are some gray areas, but basically the areas that we all agree on are very clear. They're very clear, right? Act like a love army, a total love, with love as your only, quote, weapon, unquote. And if we agree constantly and act together whenever we have enough to completely lovingly win, we can stop this river raft, right, from going off. Or we might be able, there's a good chance, I think, that we could stop it from not only from going off the waterfall in the immediate future, but ever ending it all. Ever ending it all for the human race. Which, if you think about it, is more important than almost anything you can imagine. Right? Because there's an infinite number of people at stake. So anyway, it's getting loud. Love you. Mean it. Air kisses.